In this video, what we're going to begin to do is to annotate the site plan. What that means is we're going to be adding some additional information, such as the property line lengths. If we were using bearings, we would use bearings to include that, and we're going to be labeling some of the items, such as the pool and the spa, as well as review to make sure that we've got all the dimensions that we need. We're also going to be taking a look at our tree schedule. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be labeling these trees, and we're going to create a tree schedule next to it. In addition to that, we're also going to be getting the legal description that we're going to include. So let's start by adding a few dimensions and information regarding the property. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure we're going to be doing all of this in what we would call model space. So what we need to do is to open up our model space here and make sure that we remain open as we zoom in to put our information in. So what you can tell is that we are locked in here, so I have no problem zooming in and out without losing my scale. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the Annotate tab, and we're going to look at a command called the Multiline Text, which is what we're going to be using. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're using initially the annotative style to be able to do the information that we need to put on there. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our layers. Let's look at our layer properties and see what layers we have available to us right now. What we did is we created a layer for each one of the dimension sheets that we were doing. We did one for the floor plans, for the roof, and for the site plan. What we're going to do is going to do the same thing, but instead of dims, we're going to add it for notes. So we're going to create one called Anno Notes for the floor. So let's go ahead and let's start with that one. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to go A-N-N-O-Note and -FLORE. That would be for the floor plan. Everything here can remain pretty much the same. I'm going to go ahead and start another one right now. This one is going to be A-Anno-Note Site. Let's finish that up. Alright, so we've got our two layers set up. The one that we're going to be using mainly is going to be this layer, Annotating Site. So let's go ahead and let's make that our current layer. Right in there. Let's close our properties for our layers manager. And let's go ahead and let's begin. Let's double check a couple of things. We're going to want at least this initial information to be about the same size as we have our dimensions here. We're going to also add a couple of notes underneath for the side setbacks as well as for the property lines. So going back to the Annotate tab here at the top left, I'm going to click on Multiline Text, make sure that we have annotative. 330 seconds is what it says here, but what I want to do is I click on this little arrow, and this every firm might have a slightly different way to do it, and I'm going to double check for my annotative text style here. I'm going to check and see that we're using Romans SHX. That's a nice simple one to read. I want to make sure this is set to annotative, and I also want to set that my paper text height that I want on this, that means when it prints on the sheet, that it will be 3/32 of an inch high. So that all looks good. I also want my width factor to be 0.75. Make sure I set it as current and close. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set up some information here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on Multiline Text. I'm going to create a text box here. I'm going to put my cap lock on because I want everything in capitals, and I'm going to type in side setback. Okay, so I get that. That should be correct, and it's the right size also. So I'm going to go ahead and just slightly move this over and center it on there. Now I can go ahead and I can copy that. Rather than retyping it to the other side, I'm going to go ahead and copy it here and bring it to my other side setback. I'm going to go ahead and copy it two more times. One for my front setback. Now I need to rotate that one, so I'm going to use the rotate command. And with my ortho on, I'm going to do it 90 degrees. I'm going to move it into place. And I'm going to change my text to front setback. Once again, I'm going to copy this one. And I am going to set it to my rear setback. Change the information to rear setback. That looks pretty good for that. Now, a lot of times I could just create another text box and put it to the property lines, but what I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this one to here. I can put it almost anywhere in here. I'm going to go ahead, rear setback, I'm going to change that and put it as property line. I'm going to leave a couple of spaces in between, and I'm going to give the length of that property, which is 25.0 feet. Now, if you notice, what happened was that because my text box wasn't big enough, this jumped down to the next row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and double click it, and in the text box I'm going to grab it by this little diamond right here, and I'm going to stretch it out until it looks like that. And I don't want it too close. I'm going to use my move command. I don't want it too close right there, so I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to go ahead and copy it. From here, and I'm going to place it somewhere up in here. I'm going to copy it again and move it down to here. Except I'm going to go ahead and rotate this with my ortho on again. And once I finish rotating it, I'm going to bring it back up to here and change the value to what it is on the survey. So this information that I'm getting here, as well as some of the other information, is coming directly from the survey. So if I was to open it up, let's see if I can find that survey. Might have it here on one of the other drawings that I have. So if I was to drag that survey down in here, let's take a look at that. So a lot of the information that I'm getting is coming directly from this document. Now this is an older survey that we got, that we used to be able to lay out our initial drawing. So if you look closely at some of the information right here, it tells us that the width is 100 feet. The depth of the lot is 125 feet on both sides. And along the waterway it is also 100 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and move this information back to the top, and let's go ahead and open up our drawing again to the information that we're putting. So this is correct at 100 feet, this is correct at 125 feet. I'm going to go ahead and copy this one more time and bring it to my rear property line. Now in a situation like this, what you may want to do is to modify a couple of things, such as this hatch right here. So let's take a look and see what that layer is. That is called an A dock hatch layer. Now, right now what's happening is, if we take a look at its properties, so let's take a look at A dock hatch. It's a very, very thin line weight, but still it might get it in the way of the text a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and I am going to look for transparency in here, and I'm going to modify the transparency for that specific one down to 50%, and then go ahead and close it, and it seems to be quite a bit lighter now, so that my property line, the information that I'm putting here, is going to read a little bit clearer. So that looks pretty good in terms of what we're doing. There's the additional information for the two properties on either side. I'm going to move this one just a little bit closer, like like that. Make sure that one's good back there, and there's the other one back there. So what additional information that we're going to be putting on here is going to be, as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing a legal description, that we're also going to get that information from the survey, as well as the trees, the existing trees. There was a tree survey on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mark the existing trees that we decided to keep by marking them with an E that's going to represent the existing. So the 4 existing trees that we had were these 4 right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to Annotate again, Multiline Text, and I'm going to do my text box, and I'm just going to click E right there and place that next to this tree. I'm going to copy it and place it right up to here on this one and on this one. And then finally I'm going to go ahead and put it on this one here. So what we have is we have our 4 existing royal palms that we decided to keep when we initially began to lay this out. So it's very important that we're going to distinguish the existing trees from the new royal palms that we're adding to the back. So what we need to do right now is then we need to begin to go ahead and create both a legal description here on the side and our tree survey. So let's begin by going back to Paperspace for a second. Now, one of the things that I want to do is whenever I label something, whether it's a tree survey, legal description, or something like that, I tend to want to use the similar font style and text style that we're using, for example, the labels. So I want to use this and also its line right in here underneath it. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and move it from here up to here. Now this is going to represent my legal description. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to make sure that I end up bringing this from Paperspace, where it is now, I'm bringing that into model space. That way it'll maintain its accurate size, it'll match this, but it'll now be in model space. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight these 2 items in here. I'm going to go to the Home tab, and under the Modify panel I'm going to click on the little arrow where it says Modify, and I'm going to go to the icon that says Change Space. So now when you take a look at these, both of these items, if I was to close my viewport, I cannot select them anymore because now they have been transferred over to our model space. So first thing I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and change the text here. I'm going to take my caps lock off because that's the style we use for this, and I'm going to type in legal description. I need to capitalize description, and I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out just a little bit more so that it looks a little bit better. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, again, the information that I'm going to be getting from the survey. So with me being in model space, now if it comes out green like that, all you have to do is type in regen and hit enter. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go back to the Annotate tab. I'm going to make sure I'm in Annotative. Now the only difference that I want now is I want my text for the legal description to be at a different size than this text here. This, as I mentioned before, I wanted it to be at 3/32 of an inch when printed. The information on the legal description and on the tree survey, I want it to be a little bit bigger. So I need to either create a new text style with the correct Paperspace height that I want and the correct fonts and so on, or I can take one that's existing and modify it. So let's take a look at it. Right now it's set to annotative. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go down to standard at this point, and I'm going to check the information on the standard right here. Okay, so under the standard current text style, it's using Arial narrow for the text. I can change that, at least on this drawing. Let's go ahead and change that to, you know what, I'm going to leave it at Arial narrow. and I think that'll be fine. With a width factor of 1, I think is going to be fine. But let's go ahead and let's do a paper text height for this at 1/8 of an inch. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's keep it as annotative. We'll go from there. We're going to set it as current. I do want to save my changes, and we're going to close. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to put in a text box. I am going to do cap lock, and I'm going to be starting to type in the information. Lot 3, block 15, Coral Ridge, according to the plan thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 21, page 50 of the public records of Broward County, Florida. So now I'm just going to do some corrections here, and let's see what that looks like. That looks pretty good for the information that I want. Now, if I wanted to modify this and make it look a little bit different, I can easily do that once again by grabbing this and pulling it to one way or the other, one direction, so I can sort of control the size of the paragraph that I'm doing. Now that looks pretty good for what I want to do. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy the top one right in here. Now if we were to check this, you would probably see that this right in here, if we go to its properties, you can see that it's its own style, which is Book Antigua, the height of 2 feet. So because it's a different font and so on, it's a different style that we had created for it. That's going to be the same style that we had for the labels. So it's a little bit different, but it's also looking pretty good. So it helps to keep the drawings consistent in terms of the styles for labels such as legal description. This one we're going to go ahead and change right now. We're going to change that to take the cap lock off, tree schedule. We'll go ahead and pull this in just a little bit. Again, I'm going to type in regen to get this to come out the way that I want it to come out. And what I'm going to begin to do is I'm going to go ahead, and one of the things you want to do is you want to make sure this is about as lined up as you can get. So if you really want to, what we can do is we can also go ahead, and if we can use a construction line or a line on the construction layer, we can draw a temporary line. That's going to help us keep all of this lined up the way we want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to go ahead and begin to label the existing trees, the new trees, then any of the other trees that we have on there. So if you take a look at it, we've got a symbol, and each one of these symbols should represent a different tree style. So this symbol we've selected to represent royal palms. So even though this are new trees and these are existing, the only difference is going to be the E. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this from over here, and I'm going to bring it up here and temporarily place it there. I'm going to copy another one here, which is the same, so I could just actually use that one and copy it straight down. What I want to do is, even though these trees may be different sizes on the plan to represent maybe more or less what their mature size might be. When we do this part right in here, we may want them to be pretty uniform in size. I'm going to go ahead and copy one of these, and let me see if I can copy it. Make sure. Having some trouble. Let's see if I can grab it from our model in here. Now that type was actually this one right here. Actually, it was this one. Let me go ahead and bring that down into here. Now notice here my schedule here that I guess I had done a temporary schedule. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. But it's really not going to get in the way anyways, because what we're going to do is we're going to move these over. But I want to do my work in here so that everything looks pretty much the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to resize by scaling some of these down so that they sort of end up being about the same size. So let's try this one at about 0.75, and we can increase this one. We might be able to visually do this one, but let's increase this one by 1.25. Okay, maybe just a little bit more, 1.2, and I think that's pretty good for what we want to do. Now I'm going to go ahead and reduce them all. I'm not going to reduce the E in it, and I'm going to scale all these down maybe 0.75. So they're a little bit more manageable with what we want to do. I'm going to go ahead and move this over to here a little bit closer, and I'm going to move my E from here down to here. And I'm going to move them all about to here. And I think that looks pretty good. So now what I need to do is I need to put both the common name and the scientific name. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to move these up a little bit, and all of this is going to require just a little bit adjusting most of the time. So let's go ahead and move, make sure I grab them all. Let's do a window selection. Let's try something else here. There we go. Okay, now why do you think is happening here? Now I was trying to keep grabbing these and it's not selecting anything because once again, if you take a look at that, I went back to paper space accidentally. So I actually drew, by double clicking, I'm actually switching between paper space and model space. Now that, as we know, was a potential error that could become a little bit of a problem, a liability when we start dimensioning or we start annotating things. So let me go ahead and move this one just slightly to the left. And let's go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and copy this one. And with my ortho on so it stays lined up, I'm going to go ahead and copy that down to there. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight it. And I'm going to begin to edit the information. Now, with cap lock on, I'm going to go ahead and put Royal Palm. And I'm going to put the number of the existing trees next to that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a space and a colon and a space, and I'm going to put the number. There's 4 existing Royal Palms. I'm going to go ahead and enter, And underneath it, I'm going to put in the scientific name for that, which happens to be Rostonia regia. Now, where did I get that information? That's very common information that you can get almost from any website that you go into regarding landscaping. So let's go ahead and let's bring this down about to where we want it in here. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this down. And I am going to put this in here. And for this one, it's almost identical. I'm sorry, this one was Royal Palm. Let's go ahead and modify it because this is Royal Palm, and I'm going to give a space there and just put existing, since we have 4 of those. And for this one, it's Royal Palm, same type, and we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to modify this to 6. And what we have is we have 2 more tree types that we want to do. Now, this could be a really nice shade tree in here, so I sort of think that maybe what I want to create there, or what I want to use there, might be something like a royal palm tree or something of that nature. So let me see what we can do in terms of getting a little bit of information on the type of tree that we want to use. So let me see if I can find something regarding what the scientific name is for a royal palm. So let me go ahead and let's go back to our drawing right in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up Google search right in here. And if you take a look at here, we've got information that I looked at previously for what is a southern red oak and what is the scientific name for northern red oak. So what I wanted to do was for the southern red oak, I'm going to go ahead and call it out as a southern red oak, and there is my scientific name. I'm going to go ahead and pull that back out of the way so I can put that information in my construction documents. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and copy this down, and I'm going to put southern red oak, and there's only one of those, and I'm going to change the name to what it should be, and that is going to be Quercus falcara. The southern red oak. Well, let's go ahead and let's do the same thing for these trees down in here. Now for these we have 6 of them, and what I've sort of decided we're going to do on the sides here is we're going to use what we call a crepe myrtle. So what I need to do is also find out what the scientific name is for a crepe myrtle. So if I do some information, let's take a look at what we can do. And if I went to take a look at what a crepe myrtle is, it looks like I found it. If I wanted to bring that down in here, take a look. So there it is, Lagostromia indica. And that is a crepe myrtle. So it might be spelled a couple of different ways in a few different countries and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and go to here, and I'm going to put in crepe myrtle, how it's spelled here. And there are 6 of those. And the scientific name is it's with an E. Let's go ahead and zoom out. I'm going to erase that temporary line for now. And let's see, if I can compress this a little bit more, I would be pretty happy with that. So there's two ways that I can do that. I can just move these closer together. Making sure to keep my ortho on. And I think that looks pretty good. I probably want to move these maybe a little bit closer, or I could even do them on the right hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and move them to the right hand side for now. So I'm going to go ahead and move all of this and shift that over here to the right hand side and line it up with a couple of things that we're doing. I'm also going to bring them down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and bring down my legal description a little closer to the tree schedule, and bring the whole thing over, maybe to about there. Now a lot of this is just sheet composition, but for now that's pretty good. Now all the additional information that we want to put on here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to use probably the standard text style to label the pool, to label the spa, and also to label a couple of things on the house itself. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy, and I'm going to make sure I am in model space so I can use it. I'm going to copy this, and let's move it up to here. And I'm going to go ahead with the lock on. I'm going to use pool. I'm going to move it to here. Go ahead and copy it. Move that here. Spa. And I think that looks pretty good. Now the only thing we may also want to put on is to put on a level of what our elevation is of the top of slab, or our finished floor elevation is for here. Now that would be determined by our flood criteria. So what we want to do is let's go ahead and let's bring in, let's go back to our model space, and from our blocks right in here, I had added one block in here, which was our block for at what scale we needed to be read at 1/8 of an inch. So this, if you take a look at what the scale is for that, if you look at add delete scale, that is scheduled for an 1/8 inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to bring it into here for now, and I'm going to see how that looks like on my site plan. That looks good. Go ahead and move it just a little bit more, maybe to about here. Now what I'm going to do for this, I need some additional information. It's not going to be top of beam, so I need to say this correctly. So this, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to move, actually I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to say elevation here is going to be 0, 0. Now that is a reference elevation that we're going to be using for our top of finished floor, top of slab for that. So now this 0, 0 is our what we call our benchmark elevation for construction, but that 0, 0 has a corresponding level that is in relation to sea level. Now it gets a little bit more complex than that, but in this case it is equivalent to elevation of what we would call plus 5.0 and The term that they use for that is called NAVD. That is a national vertical datum that is used for that. So 0, 0 is the equivalent of plus 5.0 NAVD. I'm just going to go ahead and move this so that it lines up with the other one that we've got. And that looks pretty good. Let's zoom out a little bit. Now granted, we would probably have a lot more information on this, such as information on the seawall, information for the dock, dimensions for the hardscapes such as around the pool and the size of the pool, including dimensions here for the driveway, the radiuses, etc. But usually those would be handled in a larger scale drawing, maybe at 1/4 inch on a second sheet or off to the side where that would be increased a little bit. So I think for now, let's go ahead and go back into paper space and let's go ahead and increase that. And what we've done is we've successfully annotated to some degree what we want for this assignment in the site plan. In the next video, we will be annotating and adding information to the floor plans and the elevations.